submission from a viewer. If I can pull it up. Okay, well, I am waiting for that to load. You may notice I am not wearing a wig today. This morning I woke up in quite the mood, so I chopped off about 4 inches of my hair, let it air dry, and here I am. And it feels good. Feels good to not have a wig when I'm wearing a big ass jacket. Gonna chug all of this and jump in. I hope you are ready to get creeped out, but hopefully be relaxed at the same time. If you have a champagne, wine, any kind of cocktail, beer on hand, maybe grab a drink so that you can drink with me. Or don't. Either way, let's have a good time. Thank you for the submission, RK. This happened when I was about 7 years old. My parents and I were visiting my granny as it was her birthday. She lived in a flat in an old 2-story house where you only have one neighbor opposite your door and 2 neighbors upstairs. All the people knew each other very well, not only in that house, but basically in the whole neighborhood, and it felt quite safe there. That day, our next door neighbor, Marina, was also at my grand's birthday party, so at some point I decided to go outside as it was a nice summer day. As I walked out of the flat, the neighbor's door opened and a man came out. I didn't know him, but I said hello. He looked handsome and neat. He was probably 25 years old and had blonde curly hair and dark eyes. He started asking me some questions and basically we exchanged small talk. I asked him who he was. He said that he lives there and it was his relative's flat. I had never seen him before and he didn't look like Marina, the other neighbor from that flat, but I didn't think much about it. He was really chill. His voice was very soothing. He asked me, "What do you want to do?" And I told him I wanted to pick some flowers from the lawn. There was a lawn right behind the house with lots of wild little flowers and an apple tree. The man said, "Do you want to take my scissors?" And he opened the door and went back into the flat. I hesitated for a bit, but followed him. He was looking for his scissors in the kitchen, and then he offered me tea. At that moment, I had already become a bit nervous and tried to go back to my flat. The man said, "Can you please bring my cap? It's on the sofa." I looked to where he was pointing at, and there was a cap, so I went to the living room to get it. Meanwhile, the man closed the door and was busy making tea, talking about his cat he had in this other flat. I must say, once again, he was really charming, and I do remember to this day how flattering it was to be friends with him for my little dumbass. His gestures were slow, and all of his vibes were not creepy at all. I stayed, and we sat on the sofa. In about 5 minutes, we heard noises from the door as someone was trying to open it. I instantly froze because I didn't even know the door was locked, and it dawned on me that I might be in trouble. I heard my neighbors screaming and banging on the door. I looked at the man and he smiled, and he said, "Go open the door. It's my aunt." I rushed to the door, already crying with fear and confusion. I let the neighbor in, and she asked me what I was doing there. I felt so ashamed, and I couldn't stop crying, so my parents eventually came out and took me with them. I managed to tell them what had happened, but I couldn't explain my panic. Then I saw everyone's worried faces, and my dad immediately went to the neighbor's flat. It turned out that man was not living there, and when my neighbor handed me to my parents, she didn't see anyone in her living room, but the window in her bedroom was open. They called the police, and I had to tell all the story several times and describe the man to the police officer. But as far as I know, they never found him. He didn't steal anything, nothing at all. I still have no idea what the heck he was trying to do to me or to the neighbor, but he is the reason why all the neighborhoods started locking their doors. And that is the end of that story. Very, very scary. Does it say how old they were? 7 years old. It's so sad because kids can be easily tricked. They're gullible, and if you have a charismatic personality, then kids are gonna like you. That's something that I spoke to my brother about recently. Something to maybe be dubious of is charismatic people who are really good at working the room and making people like them and are very extroverted. Those are people that usually become like politicians or, CEOs or positions of power because people tend to like them. And it's a superpower to have, but also because they're charismatic, we're under this false impression that they can be trusted because we like them. But really, that's not the case. It's just something to keep in mind. If somebody's very charismatic and a people person that everybody likes, that a lot of the times that's not really a true impression of who they really are. Anyway, that was a discussion we had because we were talking about Dune, the movies, and somehow it got to where we just were talking about how extroverted people have such an advantage in society, and also how people confuse charismatic people as being good people, when really a lot of the times that's not the case. And end of rant. Back to the story that I just read. I'm glad that you're okay. Honestly, who knows what their intentions were? They definitely weren't in a hurry since they were making you tea. But imagine had your aunt not come to check on her apartment or to find you. Scary. Hopefully that guy got caught. Pink Pony Club. Okay, drink number 2. Cheers. On to story number 2. That time, a whole house disappeared. This was about 2 years ago. My partner and I had a friend living with us at the time. We had a coworker with a 3-year-old son who needed to get out of an abusive situation. We had always told her that if she needed somewhere to go, she would be safe with us. That's very, very kind. One night, around 9:30, we got a message from her asking if we could pick her up and her son up. Me, my partner, and our friend all got in the car to go get them. She sent the address and we started driving that way. It was about an hour drive for us. It was very back roads and out in the country. When we got to the location, the GPS took us to something that felt very off. All 3 of us mentioned something not feeling right. There was an open gate and you could see the light from the road, so we started to drive in. When we got onto the property, we could see the house from behind the trees. It was completely empty and way too clean to be lived in. There was a single light on in the kitchen and you could see straight into the entire house. There was not a single piece of furniture, no decorations, nothing. There was a small table under the light in the kitchen, but no chairs. Everything was white. The walls, the table, the house itself. We felt super uneasy. We called the friend to let them know that we were there, but it seemed empty. She asked if we got to the right address and sent it again. It was the same exact address she had sent the first time. We know we didn't type it in wrong into the GPS because we just opened the link through texts. So we click on the same address she sent us the second time, and it started routing us for somewhere 20 more minutes down the back road that we were on. We went and picked her up and asked her about the house, jokingly asking her if it also made her uneasy. We assumed we were just being paranoid from it being late and dark out, but houses where we said there was. We knew there was, as all three of us saw it. We had pulled into the driveway of said house and right up next to it less than half an hour beforehand. So we decided that we were going to take her to that house on our way out. We wanted to show her which house we were talking about. When we got to where it was before, there was nothing but the woods and trees. No gate, no lights, no gravel driveway, nothing. We knew we were in the right place, but no house to be found. The uneasy feeling of something being off followed all three of us for a few days. We all felt like we were being watched. We still have no clue what happened. Every time I tell the story, I get goosebumps. Nothing else glitchy has happened since. And that's the end of that story. And this is the Glitch in the Matrix subreddit, which I do love that subreddit because it just talks about unusual things that happen that kind of insinuate that we're all living in a simulation. But some of the stories are really interesting. Let's see, let's go to the comments. Some people will talk about there being wormhole in time and you're seeing the past or the future, things like that, which is always fun to read about. Very interesting. An empty house that disappeared. On to story 3. This story is called Weird Encounter in the Forest During a Wedding. I still remember this day pretty vividly. I was around 14 or 15 years old, and my parents had just gotten invited to a wedding. The wedding took place on a sort of castle located on a waterfront. Anyways, we took a boat to the location, and until then, everything seemed normal. I was playing with some other kids at the wedding, and we decided to roam around the surrounding areas of the castle. We did this for hours, and everything seemed normal, except for some random drunk women who had tried to throw a stone at us. But we brushed it off, thinking nothing of it. Those bitches. Later on in the night, to end the wedding, there was a little celebration where everybody would release a small hot air balloon and let it go into the night sky. All kids, including me, decided to follow these hot air balloons as they lifted off. However, in order to follow, we had to traverse a forest. We all continued running into the forest, and that's where I and 4 more people saw it. As we were sprinting into the forest, we saw a woman sitting down, wrapped in a blanket, surrounded by 6 to 8 men with flashlights. As these men heard our footsteps, they flashed their light into our direction, but they didn't say anything. Complete silence. I stood still. It seemed like they felt like they just got caught doing something and they didn't know how to react. I ran away as fast as I could, and the others did the same. Nobody followed us. Nobody ever said something about this. And that's the end of that story, but let's go to the comments. The first comment is anyone else thinking that they interrupted a porn shoot? Oh, that's so fucking funny. Or at the very least a dogging session. It is possible. Could have been a search party for her and they found her. Could have been some sort of cult sexual assault type crime. In corrupt areas, those can intersect. Yikes. Very interesting. But, I mean, the woman wasn't screaming, so that's a good sign. If you don't hear signs of a struggle, but was a very weird situation to walk in, especially as a kid. Okay, this next short story comes with a picture, so I will be posting that. The name of this story is called Creepy Painting at Work. But first, let's take a drink. It's the middle of the day and people are still setting off fireworks. It's July 5th, for context. Okay. I started working at my local museum in May. The museum is operated out of an old schoolhouse built in the 1920s, and I spend most of my time in the office in the basement between guiding tours. Behind the office there's an old boardroom filled with old items, and behind that room is our artifact room filled with items dating back to the 1700s. When I started working here, my coworker was giving me a tour. He had mentioned this painting and how it had just showed up one day out of the blue on this table in the boardroom. Eventually, the painting showed up in different places according to my coworkers, but I had never seen this myself until last week. The basement is laid out in the loop with only a single entrance room being the artifact room in the back. There is a door on the other side of the boardroom to get in. I had entered from the door on the left to begin mopping and was able to see that the painting was no longer on the table. I circled around to the other door where the light switch was and turned on the light and saw the painting sitting nearly upright in front of the artifact room door. I mopped. I got out of there as quickly as I could until this week when I had to go in there again. I had the urge to look at this painting closer. When I did, I felt something on the back of my neck making me look up. As I did, I saw the door to the artifact room begin to open. I felt weak in the knees and sick to my stomach shortly after. I'm not sure what to think, but I was wondering if anybody has seen this painting or has had a similar experience before. I do believe in the paranormal to an extent, but I'm really not sure what to think on this one. Oh, there's two pictures. Okay, I'll go ahead and post them both. I'll do the far shot one first. As you can see, there's the painting on the floor, and I'm assuming that's the door to the artifact room. And then a close-up. It looks like an old painting your great-grandma would have. But it's very interesting when it comes to old items. You just don't know the story behind it. Was this picture sentimental to somebody? Did somebody cherish this picture? Who made this picture? How many people owned this picture before it got here? So many questions. What do you think? So far, which story has been the creepiest for you? This next story is called At the Bottom of the Hill. First time poster here. I live in a very rural area in Tennessee, and this happened either the summer of 92 or 93. So I was a preteen. I can still see this in my mind like it happened yesterday. Like I said before, a rural area in Tennessee where we used to have some serious issues with people dumping unwanted, worn out items and garbage down our beautiful hillside and ravines. At that time, it was common to find illegal dumping sites everywhere because there was no bulk pickup offered by our one-waste disposal monopoly. In this part of the state, the economic disparity is obvious. You have some of the poorest people and some multiple mansion and vacation home folks. Doesn't it just piss you off? My family fell somewhere in the upper middle class. Thinking Titanic, we would be in either the lowest rung of first class or the very top of second class. Unfortunately, the majority would be in steerage or the coal bunker. Well, it was August in Tennessee, also known as sun-scorching heat and enough humidity to make it slightly uncomfortable to breathe. Many describe it as the swamp-ass capital of the state. But what about Florida? Anyway, we had just had an extraordinarily rare murder in our county. It was all that anyone was talking about. It was all you heard in our churches and beauty salons. The victim was largely unknown, a woman in her early 30s and nowhere near wealthy. I didn't know her, nor did anyone. She had moved here less than a year ago and kept to herself and had not been reported missing. Then, just before our summer break came to an end, this lady was found at the base of a steep incline, deep in one of our densely wooded areas, by some folks out for a nature hike. There she was, found at the base of a large illegal dump on a winding dirt road that was barely wide enough for one vehicle. If you met another car, one of you would have to pull over so far you were almost off the road entirely. What's even creepier, the road was named Bone Road. When she was found, she had lost everything from the neck up, but her upper body and lower areas were recovered. Her killer had not been caught. So my mom was born and raised here and was of strong yet goofy stock. She has always been my best buddy, even when dropping the hammer on my brother and me. What does that mean? She was loved by every student she had ever taught. Our friends adored my goofy mama, often telling me how lucky I was to have her. My dad was a pharmacist in our area, smarter than most, and happy to go fill a lost or forgotten prescription even late into the night. My dad isn't from here, but it's very well known because of his job. Everyone knows my mama because she and most of our huge family have been here since our ancestors settled here in the 1800s. The rest of her family lived in the middle of Tennessee. On that day in August, we had been at a family reunion picnic at the beautiful, naturally made lake we lived near. Suddenly, a scattered thunderstorm had popped up and brought our get-together to an end. It was just me and my mom, but on the ride home, we decided we were Sherlock Holmes and Watson. We wanted to see the crime scene. I know, brilliant. My dad was at work, and my brother was with a friend. This was 1992 or 1993, so no GPS, no Alexa, no Siri or Google Earth, not even MapQuest. Dang, not even MapQuest. That's the oldest form of GPS I know. My dad was on our school board and had been given a highly detailed map of our entire county. Since neither of us knew how to reach Bone Road, it was agreed the map would be our guide. We went home, grabbed the map, and set out like we were Magellin. I don't know that reference. We eventually found the place and headed to the spot. Being the ignorant rubberneckers we were, we just planned to drive past the stupid dump site. I cannot explain how creepy this place was. A murder dump in the middle of BFE on a road that started with blacktop, transitioned to gravel, and then good old dirt. It was mid-afternoon, but the sudden rain on the August ground made the area steamy. Literal steam was emanating from the road, the fields, the woods, everywhere. That just added to the thrill of our folly. As we approached the location, there was a blind curve, making it impossible to see the place until you were right up on it. When we rounded that corner, we saw we were not alone. A very dirty man had his very dirty truck pulled over at the dump, just far enough to allow us to pass. Sure, Joe Dirt could have been just another looky-loo like us, but he gave off a creepy as fuck vibe. Just standing by his truck, looking down into the dump. It wasn't a sheriff's officer. We know all our local authorities, and they had cleared the location a day or so before. Holy shit. So they're at the location literally a day after, or 2 days after. Anyone could As we squeezed past his truck, he was standing on the passenger side of our car. I'm 12 or 13 years old. I can't drive, so he was on my side as we passed. I was so close to him I could see his 2 teeth clear as day. He just smiled in this uber creeptastic, almost leering way. Not nice and not friendly. We got past and thanked the Lord that Mr. Two-Tooth hadn't followed us. We agreed we would reach the end of Bone Road and get the hell out of there. Oh, there's a but. We reached the end of Bone Road, ending at a field. Bone Road was a dead end. No pun intended. My mom said the words I had been screaming in my head. Oh, fuck. We had no choice. We had to do a 5-point turn and go back from where we came. My mom said, "Oh, I bet he's gone," in a feeble attempt to soothe us. Guess what? He was still there, still smiling his huge tooth smile. Now, as my adult self reflected on this, he could have come after us, knowing we would be cornered, but neither of us have ever been accused of being too rational. We made it out unscathed, of course, and my dad hit the roof when he heard the tapestry of idiocy our afternoon adventure was. But there's always a but. Days later, our newspaper heralded the good news. The murderer was caught. The woman had been killed by a boyfriend who turned stalker. She had moved here from a town about 45 minutes away to get away from him, but he found her. He just drove around with her body in his truck before happening on the dump. As we stared down at this guy's mugshot, it was real. Mr. Two-Tooth was her killer. We never told my dad that part. Mr. Two-Tooth was convicted of first-degree murder and abuse of a corpse. Ew. He will die in the state prison system, serving life with no parole. Still, Mom and I promised we would never be so dumb again. We still have weird adventures, but not too freaky. Remote murder dump sites on unknown terrain with no one knowing where we are. We really could have met our literal dead end. It's an odd thing knowing that you had been face to face with a brutal murderer, not once but twice. Well, I did have a super too close to call run-in with another murderer, but that will have to be another post on another day. And that's the end of that story. Mr. Two-Tooth was the murderer, but don't they say, what is the saying? Is it that the murderer never comes back to the crime scene? Or that the murderer always comes back to the crime scene? I can't remember. There's something like that. That was a surprisingly really good story. I felt invested and wanted to know what was going to happen next, for sure. I'm glad these people are okay, of course. That poor woman that was murdered. I don't know if the story is true, but if it is, then that is a terrifying experience, and believe me, I know plenty of people that would do something this stupid. Some people just really love true crime, and I know a lot of people take it upon themselves to investigate as well, which actually has helped cops in the past with investigations, but a lot of the times it gets in the way too. But thank God they were not attacked by this killer. On to story 5. Okay, this is the last short story. Cheers. This last story is called "I've Received a Strange Response to Whistling in the Woods." For context, most people have probably heard the shave and haircut 2 bits. I need to hear it again. Isn't that like the baseball theme? Okay, well, they put a link to the sound of the jingle knock, so I'll leave the Years ago in college, I worked the opening shift at a coffee shop. In the summertime, I would get up early as the sun rose and stop by a trail sometimes on my way to work to wake myself up with a quick walk. The trail was only accessible off of a narrow, long winding dirt road, and this dirt road was off of a main road with no houses. The trail was poorly marked, so not many people would ever stop by. If there was ever anyone else, you would either see their car parked in the small 3-car gravel lot at the trailhead, or you would have to pass them on the narrow dirt road. You would have to walk a long way down a main highway road to get there otherwise. So back to the shave and a haircut bit. I parked there one morning, just kind of sitting in my car with the window down, when I heard a bird singing what sounded like the 2 bits part of the song. Tired and trying to find humor in having to be up so early, I kind of laughed and whistled the shave and a haircut part and waited for the bird to whistle back. We went back and forth with our little game a few more times until the bird stopped responding. So I figured it flew off. Before I got out of my car though, I gave it one last whistle, and I'm glad I did, because as soon as I whistled, shave and a haircut, and waited for a response, I heard 2 very loud and very human claps in the 2 bits rhythm, not far from where I was parked. I drove the fuck out of there and there was no one on the road for miles. Not the most terrifying story on here, but it weirds me out to think someone might have just been out there in the woods watching me alone in my car. And that's the end of that short story. Going to the comments, someone said, "Has no one ever told you not to whistle in the woods?" It's so funny, because when I was a little girl, I used to whistle at the sparrows all the time. Not just the sparrows, just all the morning birds. And like, it would go silent, and then they would like whistle back. And I remember I used to always whistle at the birds for many years. I'm sure that's normal. Somebody put, there's an area we hike in, and there's a bird there we call the digital bird. It makes noises mimicking what sounds like a cell phone ring or a weird digital scale up and down. Such a weird noise to hear from a bird out in the wild. Yeah, animals do mimic sounds that are familiar to us. But are there birds that mimic clapping sounds? I wonder. That is pretty creepy, honestly, if somebody's responding back with claps and they're hiding in the bushes. Creepy, creepy. Good thing he drove away.